What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Oscar's Cozy Corner. I have a really fun video for you today. Now, if you are a decorator and you love to decorate, you will be using the landscaping materials very frequently in Disney Dreamlight Valley. And with the Storybook Vale update, we've got an incredible amount of new ones. There are so many new items this time around. We actually have over 80 new landscaping items, and that means 80 new items that are unlimited use. No Scrooge store, no premium store, no crafting. You get these straight away and you can use as many as you want. I don't know about you, but that seems like it's the most addition of landscaping items that we've had so far. I think that's way more than we got with Eternity Isle. And these are far more whimsical. These are far more interesting. They have so much depth, detail, and they're specialized to each biome that they're from. So in this video, I'm actually going to show you every single new landscaping item. I'm going to talk about them, what I like, what I dislike. Spoiler alert, there's not a lot that I dislike. These are some incredible additions, and they're going to be useful for both decorating at Storybook Vale, but also back in Disney Dreamlight Valley, which is amazing. It's great to have that flexibility. With all that being said, let me not waste too much more time. Let's just get straight into it, and I'm going to start over in the bind. All right, I'm going to start with the bind because that is the first biome that we land in when we come to Storybook Vale. So if you scroll down on the furniture tab all the way to landscaping at the bottom, you'll see these couple of options. You should be familiar with these, especially if you are a decorating fan anyway. I'll go through each of these options one by one per biome, if that makes sense. So we'll start with the bind and then we'll go into underbrush. Now, there is only one thing from the bind biome in the underbrush, and that is this autumnal leaf pile. It kind of reminds me of the hay bale, I think, that we got from Mulan. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like this. I think it's fun. It gives me, you know those videos where there's dogs kind of like jumping into the big pile of leaves? If we did have a dog in Dreamlight Valley, I wish that they would be able to do that. If I move it on over to kind of like the yellower patch of grass, you get a better sense of the colors. Now, it does pick up every single color in the bind. It's obviously those like oranges and deep reds and stuff like that. I think it fits. This one might be a little bit more difficult to decorate with. I do find like the hay bale difficult to decorate with as well, so it wouldn't surprise me if I don't use this all that much. However, it does blend really, really nicely on the orange path, and even more so because there's leaves kind of like in the texture of the bind path as is. So if I come out of furniture mode, you can actually see that it does just kind of blend, but it adds a bit of texture, adds a bit of depth, and then also adds a bit of height, which is really nice. I like this one, but like I said, this is the only new underbrush item for the bind. So if I go back into furniture mode and I come down to trees, this is where we've got all of the new trees. So these are all of the biome trees for every single biome. Like I said, I'm going to just do the bind ones for the time being. I'm going to get rid of that little leaf pile. And then I'll just start from the top. So we have this bind round bush here. Now, this is basically a recolor of the bushes that we have in the valley. I am actually really happy that they went ahead and did this because I wasn't sure if we were going to get sort of a new look for a flower bush, but the fact that they've done the exact same means that you can transport them to the valley and use them in the valley as well in place of your existing bushes. So the recolor is really nice. It's got the red tones of the bind. And then there's also white flowers on it as well. There is a little bit of a texture issue just down here. You can kind of see that creeping through, a bit of clipping at the bottom. At first glance, I thought that might have been like a storybook or something, but it doesn't appear to be. It does just seem to be some sort of texture issue. However, it does fit nicely in this biome. It obviously is used in the environmental side of things as well. So they use it up on the hillside and sort of like around the edge. A nice little touch if you wanted a sort of like deep red or deep orange flower bush that adds another color to our color wheel. So we love that one. Coming back in here, you will see there is a small bind bush. Now this one is really quite small. It kind of reminds me of the dwarf trees that we have over in the valley. This one is more of a yellow tone. It's not like super yellow like the Mythopia trees. However, it's kind of like a pale yellow, sort of like verging on pale orange. This is small enough to create like maybe a little path with or something like that. If you're decorating in the bind, that would be really fun. And then matching that is a bind shrub, which is a slightly larger version. That is going to be a common theme with all of these trees and all of these underbrush shrubs. We do have an incredible amount of these new trees. So there seems to be a size, like if you pictured it in clothes, it's kind of like from XXS all the way to XXL, and we're getting everything in between, which is really nice because obviously some of the trees in the valley are limited just to the one size, or if we're lucky, it might be sort of like 3 different sizes. But with these trees, not the case. If I place the next one down, which is the mini bind tree, so you'll see we're going from shrub, tree, bush. This one's a little bit taller. I like the way that it has one single branch coming out the side. That adds a bit of definition to it. And obviously, it has quite a depth to the trunk, which I like. It has sort of like a very interesting bark pattern on it. I love the... Which tree is it? Let me check. I love the tall birch tree from the original game, just because of the detail that it has on the trunk. So nice to get something else with a bit of interest, especially if you're doing sort of like any sort of autumnal builds, given the time of year, and this is the perfect biome to do them in. Moving on, we do then have a small bind tree. I'm actually going to line these up in order. So we've obviously got the shrub. I think we've got the mini tree, the small tree, and then we've got the... that is the small tree. This is a little bit bigger. It doesn't actually feel like a small tree. I guess in comparison to the bigger ones, it is. This, once again, has a really interesting trunk to it. It has a really interesting like root system. So it's nice to add a bit of texture and depth to your builds. And I don't actually think that there are multiple versions of these. So because we're obviously getting all the different sizes, they are just single versions of those trees, which is absolutely fine by me. That doesn't bother me at all because we're getting such a variation of trees. So next up will be the tall bind tree. Now this one is much bigger, and I do find that this one has quite a different color on the trunk. So if you are trying to mix and match, even though the leaf pattern is the same, the trunk color is actually different, and it doesn't have quite the winding trunk that the smaller ones do. So that is more of a standard tree, just kind of an up and down. And like I said, just be aware that it does have a different color trunk, because if you're trying to kind of like match your builds together, I'm quite particular when I do my builds about having sort of like these things match. So I actually didn't know that. I'm finding this out for the first time, which will be handy for me to know when I come to do my bind decorating, which will hopefully be very soon. Coming back to the furniture menu, you will see that there is also a large bind tree. Now this one goes back to the root system that we had from the small one, and it goes back to the root system color that we had from the small one. So again, they start to bring the ground up into this tree, which I think is really good. There's no clipping issues like we were having with some of the other trees. I know that I think it's the palm trees that are having issues at the moment in the base game. When you put them on the sand, they're getting grass, and when you put them on the grass, they're getting sand. So it's nice that this is kind of like resolved. I mean, even when you put it on the half, my camera's being thrown out by the other trees. Even when you put it on the half, you can see that it does pick up exactly the ground underneath it, which is really nice, and it makes a difference. It's those little details, he says. Look at the clipping. Let me see if I rotate it, if it fixes itself. It does. It's those little details that make all the difference and make it just feel like a polished and a finished game. So yeah, I'm very happy with that one. Let's see what else we've got. If I open back up, we see that there's a forked tree. So this one is slightly smaller. This probably goes somewhere in the middle there. But this one, as is in the name, has the little forking sort of like in the middle. So again, texture, symmetry, all of that sort of stuff. If you're using them, you can kind of like rotate it twice and you'll get a symmetrical look if you love that sort of thing. If you've watched the channel for a while, you know that I do. So I really love that tree as well. And then I think there's one more that is just a regular size. Yeah, it's this one here. So again, this one kind of does have a fork to it, sort of like at the top, just beneath the leaf canopy. But I actually love that there's kind of like a gap in this one, and there's a gap here. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that somewhere on the outskirts, this is probably where they use the books, but we don't actually have any of these versions of the trees themselves with the books in them. In the other tab, in the rocks tab, I do believe that there are some books in them, but just to be aware, if you're using them from the trees tab specifically, it does leave the books out, and that's probably so we can use them in the valley without having to worry about bringing like too much of the bind over, because these are quite versatile, and these are obviously yellow trees. It just gives us another colorway, and Gameloft probably didn't want us to be limited in what we use by bringing sort of like the bind back into the base game. So yeah, I think that these trees look great. I love them. Interesting that this is the only one with a different color trunk. I'm wondering if that is a mistake. It might be, it might not. Who knows? Gameloft do whatever they like. But yeah, if we scroll through the list, you will see that that is it for the bind trees. We do have a couple of little sort of like interesting ones here. We do have access to a literary sunflower. Now, this doesn't act as a flower, it is just a decoration. However, if I come over here to where the bugged flowers are, I'm starting to get a line, as you can see. It's very similar to these, so don't get confused. If you do place any of those decorations down, it is not a flower that you can pick up. It is just actually a decorating flower. If you pick it up, it won't count towards your flowers. I think there's a fling quest as well that requires these yellow versions of the flowers. So yeah, just remember, if you place these down, these aren't pick upable as a flower. Moving on, there is also a scholastic sycamore. Now, this one is really cute. This one does have a book on it. It's obviously not a really large tree, so you probably won't be using it like to do any large scale decorating. However, the fact that this has like the little candles around it, it's sitting on a book, it's got the red leaves as well as the yellow. This might be, even though it's small, this might be one of my absolute favorite items in the game, especially in decorating. And we don't have to craft it, we don't have to buy it, you just get it right off the bat. So I feel like Gameloft have really stepped up with giving us access to different landscaping materials this time, as I am showing you and will continue to show you. But yeah, I'm really happy that we're getting such a wide range of stuff that we can use not only here, but also in the base game valley. So as you can see, there's even more trees here. Now, those ones that I showed you with the yellow canopies are specifically bind trees, but then there are also red ones down here as well. So let me show you this little fantasy leaf flame. Again, in the same vein as this book over here, it is sitting on a pile of books. It does have some root system coming out of it. This is super fun for decorating, especially around like a house or something like that. I do have a build planned with I think it's the autumnal house. It's the magical edition reward house. I can't remember its exact name. However, I'm definitely going to be using these and this one in that build. So keep an eye out for that coming soon. I can't wait to get started on that. Coming back to the trees tab, you will see, as I said, there's some leafy birch trees. There's some different colors of the trees that we have already. Let me put this bookshelf log down first, however. Now, this is adorable. We do have a lot of logs sort of in the game already. I know that there's a Forest of Valor one, and I think there might be a Dazzle Beach one, though I might be corrected on that. This one takes that similar vein, and it just adds a Storybook Vale twist to it. You can see that kind of the log is filled in with some books, and it does have the candles and the leaves on the outside. I think, personally, like these 4 items here are sort of representative of the Storybook Vale and probably the love and care that Gameloft have put into this DLC. I know that people have been raving about the DLC, and I have been as well. It is really incredible. There's a couple of glitches here and there, however, nothing too game-breaking. But I just think the detail and the cohesiveness that Gameloft have gone for with this DLC is evident in the small items just like this, because this is just incredibly detailed. The little candle, the leaves, the root system, and then obviously the books inside the log. They've just done such a great job, and I will continue to sing their praises as long as I find things that are amazing about this. So let me bring out the trees that we do have already. I know that people have been asking for orange trees for the longest time. The frozen trees from the Frozen Realm were high on the request list for many decorators. So this is the maple tree. Placing that one down, you can see that it's basically just a reskin of the maple tree that we currently have. It's just got an orange sort of canopy on it instead. Getting multiple of these out, I know that we do have variations of the maple tree in the base game. I don't believe, just checking, yeah, I don't believe that we do have multiple versions of it on this one. So it is just the one that kind of like leans. So that's something to be aware of if you're doing any sort of build, that it does lean in. So you're going to have to be careful about where you place it, because if you're trying to get some sort of perspective or something, perhaps in Dream Snaps, it might not be the most effective choice. Just something to be aware of. But otherwise, it is a very nice addition, and you can straighten it up by just putting it sort of like back on itself, just like that. We also get some red versions of the birch trees, which is really nice. Like I said, I really love the trunks on these birch trees. I love them in real life as well, but I just think they look great. I think there's a lot of texture to them, and it's really nice to have red versions. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, are these the trees from the Frozen Realm? I have not been there for quite a while, so it might be these specific trees that people were after. If that's the case, there's going to be many happy people with the update this time around. But yeah, let me know in the comments if that is correct. The only thing that I can see that I would kind of comment on about this birch tree, this one specifically on the left does seem to have the branches coming out of the canopy. I don't know if that's intentional. I don't believe that it does that with the base game one. If I scroll down to find it, it is here somewhere. Here it is. Now, if I find a version that does have the two, because I know that we have an RNG on the base game Valley ones that gives us different sizes. There we go. Oh, it is the same as the base game Valley. I never noticed that. I never ever noticed that the branches came out of the tree. That's interesting to me. Never mind, let's get rid of that one because that is not what this video is about. Moving back onto the trees tab, I do believe I missed this little red bookmark vine. Let me go ahead and place this down just over here so we get an idea of what that looks like. This one is a reskin as well. This is a reskin of a little item that we have. Again, I can't remember if that's base game or not. It's in here somewhere. Or perhaps it is, I think it's actually an underbrush. Let me go over here. Yeah, it's this Tangle Ombre brush. I knew it was. So interestingly, that is in the wrong tab technically, and also something to highlight that this is an Eternity Isle item. So they've reskinned an Eternity Isle item for the Storybook Vale. I'm not mad at it. I love the color. I saw those, I think, in one of the first trailers, which I kind of picked up on immediately. And yeah, I love this one as well. It just adds another little bit of texture and depth to some builds, and it's nice to fill in space with things like this. It is 4 tiles, just so you know. Some of the additions have only been 1 tile, especially the Eternity Isle items. A lot of those foliage pieces were just one tile, so this one is 4. So it can make decorating a little tricky if you're trying to fit it in a small space, but the more you know and the more you can do with decorating. Going back to the trees tab, we will see that there are still a couple of items left. There is another version of a reading nook. So this one is actually part of the rocks, and this goes in the water, which is really nice. But I'm going to skip that a sec because I believe it's in the rocks tab, which I'm going to come over to in a minute, because there are still some more trees from this bind area that I want to highlight. There is this bookshelf tree. Again, I think that is a rock item. Let me just check before I go ahead and go into that one. It is, yes. So let me get rid of that. And then we're going to go back into trees because a lot of these items are kind of crossing over between different categories. It's quite difficult to keep track of them. That's why I wanted to make the video so you could see what they all look like and you know what you're getting or what you're placing down. So these should really just be in the rocks tab. So I'll cover those in a sec. However, there's a couple more trees here. So there's the tree with bookish roots. Now this is coming away from these kind of like static trees here that don't have any book references. These are now some red ones that do have the books integrated into them. So this is a change. This is kind of like this one, I guess, or this one, the yellow version that we had, but it is obviously reskinned with a red canopy. And then it does have these books with the pages scattered underneath it. What I love is that it does use the same root system. I believe, yeah, it's a slightly different color. It's a slightly lighter color. So that is nice to differentiate because if you use this and the yellow ones, then you get a couple of different tones, which is always really positive. So I love that one, especially when you come onto the book nook tree as well. As I pointed out, I actually think, yes, it is. So as I said, the yellow version does give you a version of that book nook without the books in it, probably for use in the valley or anywhere that you don't want to necessarily cover off a book theme. However, this one does give you the red version that does have the books inside of it, and then it has the pages around the base as well. There is also a bigger version of an orange one. So this is an orange tree. So we're kind of getting 3 different tones of trees in the bind biome. We're getting the yellows, we're getting the oranges, and the deeper reds. This is quite a large item. I really like this. I think this one might be my favorite tree, just because of the size of it, just because of the way I feel like they've approached incorporating those books in such a nice way. Because when you think of like books and trees, and maybe in fantasy and mythology and that sort of stuff, the trees are always really large, they're really winding, and it's nice that they've kind of carried that approach through, and even bringing the roots out to the side like that, without mentioning the little library that we've got going on in the tree, just makes it feel much more whimsical and much more in keeping with the vibe that they're going with for the Storybook Vale. There's also the trees that do have the pages on them. So we've obviously got an orange tree with some books around the base, but then they do actually have pages coming out of the trees, which I just think this is so fun. When I saw these pages and these trees in the trailer, and I think it was in the showcase as well, because I think they were placed default in the biome to begin with. I picked everything up because I like to start with a blank slate just so I can gather all my resources. However, when I saw these in the trailer, I was like, please, please, please let us have these. And they've gone ahead and done it. So yeah, bravo Gameloft. It makes all the difference to decorating, and I cannot wait to use these in some builds. Finally, there is a big autumnal tree. This one kind of has like a moss on the tree trunk as well. So that is another element and another texture that they're bringing in. Again, this gives me kind of Tree of Life vibes from Animal Kingdom, just in the way it kind of swirls up into the big canopy. This one does also have books in it. Again, they've just kind of done another version. So this one has the shelves, this one is a little nook, and then this one is kind of like stacked diagonally. So as I mentioned over here with these items, the attention to detail is just second to none, even in the landscaping tab and the decorating tab. And it makes a change for them to just give us everything. Sometimes they keep kind of the environmental elements to themselves, or they keep them locked to the biomes and stuff that they're from. But this time around, it just seems as they said, give them everything. We're going to give them everything that they want. So that is it for trees. That is it for trees and some of the underbrush. I do feel like some of these items should have been an underbrush. However, there are also some more big rock structures. So I believe that these ones at the top and the first ones are water-based ones. So that's something to note, because I did think that when I saw these, I could place them on land. I know this one does say waterside. However, this one just says stone study. So it's worth pointing out that this is a water-based item and you can only place it in the water. But it's obviously like a little reskin of some of these that we see dotted around the edge of the water in the bind. Again, I love it. It's even got the little fern and the little reeds that we have from the base game. So they're reusing elements and trying to tie things in together. So if you wanted to put these in the ponds in the base game valley, you definitely could. And then you could decorate with the reeds around it and some ferns around the edge. And immediately you've got another centerpiece in the water that kind of ties together. So I'm just so impressed that they've done something that will tie both the DLC and the base game together in terms of decorating. I love that one, and I love this one as well. Let me see. This waterside study one. This, again, is just another variation of the rocks. It's got an open book on it this time, so it's kind of like as if somebody's been sat there reading, and it does also bring in that little flame book. I believe that's what it was called, just in here. So yeah, I like that they added some water features. I don't think we get a great deal of water features with the base game, and we didn't get any with Eternity Isle, so it's nice to have something else that we can place in the water, as well as this tree and rocks. So you can see that I've already got that down. I did leave these in the water, but I'll just give you a better look at it. Again, it has the reeds on it, it has the little fern, and then of course it's got the books. But these canopies are red, so they match in with these. And when you kind of like zoom out and you just look at all of these together, I bet somebody at Gameloft looked at these and they thought, I did well. I did really well with this. So that is it for water ones, I believe. Moving on to the really large items, you'll even see here. Like I said earlier, they've done a great job with adapting these pieces to the biome that they're from. Or in terms of like the biome substrate, the flooring of the biome, you can see those leaves kind of picking up on the structure of this piece. I'll place this at the front just because it's quite large. I have always said that if you're on Switch or anything like that, or something with a lower item limit, using these big pieces rather than using the little ones and kind of making your own version of this is much better, because this only counts as one item. You'll see that I took it out. I was on 772, now I'm on 771. So it does only act as a single item, but you're still getting the impact of having, you know, multiple trees, multiple rocks and things like that. And this version has an incredible amount of detail, to be honest. It's got all of the roots, it's got the little libraries, it's got the candles on the edge. I just think, I don't know. Sometimes I'm lost for words because it's so impressive. Especially because it's got like the bushes on it. It's got the little hill. The only thing I wish is that we could run up these hills. Obviously, I know that we can't. However, I do think it would be really fun if we could kind of like go up and over these little mounds, so we could run to the other side, because that's how it feels. It does feel like a little bridge sometimes. There is another two, I believe. So there's a bookshelf tree here. So that's just using that bookshelf one that I loved from here that's kind of incorporated that, and it's just done its own little thing with the smaller trees, the bushes, and stuff like that. That is a really impeccable item. There's so much detail on it, and for only using one item, I think that's going to be a great option for people wanting to decorate the bind without getting too close to their item limit. And finally, there is a reading nook tree, which I have already covered. For some reason, that is in rocks as well. So you'll see that sometimes the crossover between rocks, underbrush, and trees is a little blurry. Some of them might be miscategorized. However, I love these items. I think they look great. Let me come out of furniture mode, and then I'll just have a little stroll around so we can take a look at them from like the character's point of view. They do cast like a lot of shadows. However, you can obviously offset the time to get whatever time you want. But moving around out of the tree, you can see the size of them compared to the character. So a couple of them are really tall, and then a couple of them, like these shrubs here, are quite small. But regardless, these items for the bind, or from the bind at least, are just pretty impeccable. I'm not going to lie. Let me run over here. Look at that. Isn't that great? Even just putting that down and taking a picture right here just feels already impressive. I love it so much. All right, coming on over to Mythopia, where we can see some snippets and a little winged horse terrorizing me in the background. But this particular biome does come with its own suite of landscaping items as well. If I head on into furniture mode and we come down into underbrush again and we start from here, you will actually see that there is nothing in underbrush for this biome. The Magnolia path is from the base game. The Plumeria path is actually a tapestry reward. And then these couple here, which I'm going to show you in a sec, are from Everafter. So we can go straight into trees for Mythopia, and you will see again we've got this little flower bush, this round flower bush. This is just a reskin, as I covered off in the bind one, of the flower bushes that we have so far. It doesn't seem to have the clipping issues that the bind one has along the bottom, and it does have a nice kind of purple, almost lilac or maybe cyan flower on it. So if you are doing a build that has like yellow tones or maybe even purple tones, this would be a perfect little addition for that. Not much more to say about it. It is just a flower bush. However, the flower bushes can come in handy in lots of different builds. The same as the bind trees. I'm not going to talk overly about each one. These ones are just yellow versions of them in exactly the same sizes. As you can see, the Everafter ones in the list as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and place these down, especially in their different sizes. You will see the tall one. Interestingly, this tall one does have a different color tree trunk again on it. It seems like they've just gone with a specific color tree trunk for that type of tree, which is interesting. It does have the large tree. Now, these ones don't have any books on them, just like the ones didn't in the bind until we got down to the book section. However, it does have the little book nook, or space for books, which they used kind of as this render for this tree, taking out the library elements. And then there's also this little forked tree. The same one that we have in the bind, looks just as good with the yellow canopy. I think you could even bring these over into the bind if you were doing a build, because kind of like red, orange, and yellow go together anyway. So this would fit in pretty well in the bind. The only one you might struggle with is Everafter. So these are the individual styled Storybook Vale trees for Mythopia, in the same way that we're getting these kind of trees in different colors in each biome. However, if we scroll down the trees list a little bit, you will see that there are some more down here. These are meant to be rocks, so I'll touch those in a second. Just down here, you will see that there's kind of different versions of existing trees. So we don't actually have these versions of the maple trees in the base game. Even though they're called maple trees, they are quite similar to the Storybook Vale trees. They're just a lot smaller. They actually remind me a lot of the pink trees that we got with the Mulan update, the smaller canopies, and I believe there was a green version as well. If I come in on the camera a little bit, you will see they've got a lot of similar elements as the bind ones did. They kind of like curve and they have the interesting tree trunks. However, this one is really nice because it's quite low to the ground. So you could create like a little sheltered area, or you could create something like running up a path. That could be a lot of fun. Those two are interesting because they do fit in the same style as these ones, but they are classed as maples. And you can see that the canopy on them is just ever so slightly different. So they are a slightly different tree. However, ones that are very different are the cypress trees. So obviously all of this biome is inspired by kind of like Greco-Roman architecture and Hercules and all of that good stuff. But if we zoom in, cypress trees are kind of synonymous with Greece and things like that. We do have 3 different variations. So we've got a yellow version, which is called the yellow cypress. We've got a spiral cypress, and then we've got a thin cypress. I've actually considered putting cypress trees in my garden before, but they actually turn out to be very, very expensive. At least with Dreamlight Valley, I don't have to pay anything and we get unlimited versions of them. So with the yellow version, you can see that it's obviously just a reskin of these different versions of the cypress tree, however, in a yellow tone with yellow leaf patterns. This middle one, which I believe is called the spiral cypress, this has a couple of leftover leaves in it. So it's kind of like they've merged together a light green version with some golden leaves. And then this one also does have a different color trunk. This one has got a much lighter trunk than the one on the end, which is the thin cypress. So this thin cypress actually looks more spirally than the spiral one, at least to me. However, it's nice to have a new tree that is actually green as well, because as much as I love all of these different color elements and the different color trees that they've given us with each biome, it is nice just to have like a regular green tree as well, especially one that is so structured like this. So if you've got the, I believe it was the Hercules item from the premium shop, there was a temple, and then there was a few other bits with like the archways and stuff like that, that would go perfectly with these items. Or if you're doing any sort of structured build, even using the big square topiary that we got from the base game, that would match. If you were wondering what the gap was, then I was remembering how to say topiary, because it's not topiary, as I've been corrected. So yeah, anything that you're doing like build-wise that requires structure, this will be a really nice cypress tree for, alongside the other versions, but they're a little more specialized in their color, so you might need to be careful where you use them to make them look their best. Coming back into the trees, that is actually it for Mythopia's trees. There were a lot more with the bind. However, when you look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 trees just for one biome, excluding the flower bush. That's pretty impressive to me. Moving on over to the rock section, because there are crossover here, which you're going to have to go back to the tree section for, because they do not appear in the rock section like the bind ones do. So let me scroll down on the rock section of the trees. You will find these Mythopia plants. This does have a smaller version of like a rock structure. Again, I keep banging on about it, but using these instead of single trees does only require one item in your item limit, so that just makes life a lot easier. Placing a bigger version down, this kind of like mixes the rocks together. The mossy rocks, interestingly, that we get from the base game valley, so these are actually reminding me of like the Wild Tangle mossy rocks, but also the Glade of Trust one. So you see that the Glade of Trust rock is bugged, which means that we'll check the Sunlit Plateau rock, and they've used the same texture from those mossy rocks to bring over to Mythopia, which is interesting because I thought we might have gotten some more plain rock versions for Storybook Vale. However, we didn't. We did just get these big clusters, but I'm not mad about it. They look really nice. They look really pretty. And yeah, I think that they'll go well with this biome and any particular build. If you do move them over, so let's say you wanted to bring it down to the bind as an example, it does adapt to the biome floor. Even though the moss doesn't adapt, the actual circle itself does adapt to the biome, and you will see that it kind of like just blends between the two. So that's really nice for adaptability and moving it around the different areas, especially if you take it back to the base game and take it back to the valley. At least you know that it matches and it will fit in with wherever you end up putting it. Scrolling on down, there is one more. There's one called a vegetation mass. Now, it does use these pink and green bushes, which I believe are in the trees tab as well, so I will show you those. However, this gives us a much bigger version of these smaller trees, obviously matching that one, but then it obviously links a little small tree in it and some bushes and rocks as well. So again, I keep going on about these. If you are limited for space, try to use these. It will give you the same impact without having to eat up too much of your item limit. Now, this one I found really interesting. It does have a flower-touched windmill, and that is in trees for some reason. I have not even unlocked the further parts of Mythopia just yet because I don't have enough storybook magic. However, I do know that one of the biomes does cover off and have these windmills as a feature. It obviously has these really bright pink flowers as well, which I love. But you do see these sort of like windmills across Greece and things like that. And I believe maybe Cyprus. Somebody can fact check me on that. However, I love that it's an interactive item. It is rotating at all times, so it keeps a little bit of kinetic energy. And if you've watched my videos before, you know that I love a little bit of kineticism in the game because it just adds a bit of interest and it adds a bit of life. Is it a tree? I'm not sure. However, I do understand that they might not have anywhere else to put it, so I'm not complaining. I think that's a lot of fun. We do also get some flower patches. Now, I thought these would have been in underbrush. It does just look like they're miscategorized, but at least I'm covering them off so you know where they are. I'll just put both down. We do have this pastel flower patch, and then we have the ever-growing flower bush. These are really nice. I love the colors of the flowers on these. They do match the biome perfectly. However, I can see this matching really well in the base game, especially in some of the particular biomes. But if you're using a build that has like a lot of pinks, it is quite whimsical. And there's obviously a lot of flowers as well. So if you did have some of the poppies lying around that you've picked up from this biome, you could decorate kind of with this and the poppies to sort of like bring a really bright pink tone to life, which I think could be a lot of fun. Matching with that is obviously this flower bush here, and this one is gigantic. Let me compare it for you to the smaller version of the flower bush that we have. So obviously this bush is a lot taller and it's a lot wider. It's very vibrant, it's very bright. Actually, this color scheme is right up my street. I love these colors together, and when I first saw these in the trailer alongside, I think it was something that I mentioned in the bind, I was like, please, please, please let us have access to that. And they went ahead and gave it to us. So I'm very happy with that, and I'm very happy with everything that they've given us also for this Mythopia biome, because they didn't have to give us everything, but they've chosen to, and I think it just makes decorating a lot easier, but also makes us feel like they're listening to us, because we've been asking for all of these different color trees for the longest time. Now, there's not actually anything else in this list from Mythopia, so what we'll do is we'll head on over to Everafter. Okay, I've made it over to Everafter. You'll be thankful to know that I've checked these categories before hitting record, so I know where things are. There are no Everafter items in rocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into underbrush, and we'll start there. I actually think that Everafter is the biome that's given us the most landscaping material, because it's given us trees, but it's also given us some giant flora and a lot of mushroom-related items, which is very exciting for anyone that loves like Fey mythology and all of that sort of thing. So I'm going to start with these blue fiddleheads. This kind of reminds me of a little fern coming up from the ground. I believe this is Alice in Wonderland related. I did pick up on this in my Disney Details video. This is kind of what you see on the live action poster of Alice in Wonderland. It's very whimsical. It's very cute. I don't know what it is about these sort of things. Even in real life, ferns kind of give me the creeps, the way they kind of like unfurl themselves. So I don't know. This does make me feel some type of way. I don't know if it's great. However, I love the color. I love how vibrant it is. I also love, you can see as I kind of adjust the camera, you'll see that it's got a little bit of height to it. So it's not just the fern coming out of the ground. It does adapt to the ground, and it brings up the color, as you can see over here as well, of wherever you place it, which is really nice. It's a step up. No clipping, which is what we want. Coming back in here, we do have a purple spiral mushroom. Now, these are some of the smaller items. There are bigger mushrooms in the trees tab, but this is a purple version of a spiral mushroom. It does look like a mushroom, don't get me wrong. It does give a different kind of style to a mushroom. A lot of them we know are kind of like toadstools, and that's what people are expecting. However, this could be used in a bunch of different builds, and I do expect to see some incredible Everafter builds with all of these landscaping items. And what I really love about this, and the reason why I did this video, all of these items are here for free and they're all unlimited. So you don't need anything premium shop. You don't need to go to Scrooge to kind of like get anything on the off chance that the RNG is going to be kind to you. All of these are available, and you can use these immediately in any of your builds, which is great. We do get sort of like a more traditional mushroom look here with the golden felt cap ones. I like that there's three. I love the little, like I said, traditional mushroom shape. That is a lot of fun. And I love the gold color, because even just here, we've got 3 different colors of mushrooms. So it's really nice that they're not all one tone, because when you look at Everafter, it is kind of just like this deep blue and purple. However, they've really mixed it up with the foliage, which is nice. It gives us options. There are also some flowers. Obviously, there is this Fey Phlox flower, and then there is this Fuchsia Sprite flower. Now, these are giant flowers. They are really big compared to the character as well. Let me come out, and you will see that they're not a traditional flower size. This one is essentially the size of my character, and then this one is really, really wide as well. So I think the oversizedness, and they do approach this oversizedness in Storybook Vale in general as well, especially in this biome, when you think of the teapot falls and stuff like that. So it does add to that whimsy and that sense of kind of like Alice in Wonderland and things like that. I can't remember if these are exactly from Alice in Wonderland. However, they do fit the vibe and they do fit what we're going for. And I think that they've done a great job. Even just looking at that little lineup there, we've got 5 very different items there for use in a bunch of different builds. And I think bringing even these back into the valley, if you're doing some decorating over there or on the floating islands coming out in a couple of weeks' time, this like little lilac one is such a nice color, and I can see me using this in a bunch of different builds. So that's it for the underbrush for this biome. There isn't a great deal of underbrush items, however, some of them are in trees, so that is something to be aware of. There are 2 different types of trees in this trees tab for Everafter. Well, there's actually 3 if you count the mushrooms as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the firs, because they have given us some new fir trees in the Everafter colors. There is a light version and there is a dark version. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just place these down immediately. I'll place the small ones over here. So there's a small version. There's kind of a scraggly version. There's a full version. There's a tall version. And I believe there is kind of like a regular version. There we go. So that's the 5 of them, all different heights, all different sizes. I think that the texture on the canopies of these are really nice. These kind of remind me of Christmas trees, I guess, because they're quite low down to the ground and they don't have too much of a tree trunk on them. You could use this in some sort of holiday build as Christmas approaches, which would be really nice. Again, I keep talking about the texture of the trunks. However, the texture on these are brilliant. It's kind of in the same vein as those birch trees that I love so much. Just a lot of interest, a lot of depth, and a lot of detail. Yeah, great job with those. And we do have another colorway of them. If I place these ones down, these match kind of a little bit more to the floor color of this Everafter biome rather than the light ones. However, I've already placed that one down. However, it is nice to get a second version and to just be able to play with something different and mix and match and kind of make them work however you want to make them work. So I can see a lot of builds being done with this. You might be able to bring them over to the Forest of Valor as well. That would be a lot of fun. But on the whole, always welcome to have new fir trees. We do also have the exact same trees that we had in both of the other biomes, so I'm not going to go through each of those individually. I will just touch on this flower bush. We do have another reskin of it. This one has got kind of more of a red flower, although there's a little pink tone to that. And then, yeah, the flower bush itself, the foliage on it just matches the biome and kind of matches the fir trees, I would say. Again, no clipping on this one, so it's interesting that it's just the bind one that is having an issue with clipping on the bottom. So that's something to be aware of if you do want to use these. I'm going to place these down. There's a little spelling mistake here. This should say shrub, as the rest say shrub. However, we'll ignore that. They've put so much work into the game. There's bound to be 1 or 2 little typos. I'll line these up again. I know that there is a forked version down here, so maybe I can... No, I got the lineup wrong. I was hoping that I would get it right this time because I haven't done it in either biome, but we were close. We were close. And then there is this tall Everafter tree as well. Oh no, I missed one. Look. Oh, darn it. Never mind. Never mind. So yeah, these are the same trees from the other biomes, just reskinned to this biome. I actually find it really interesting that they've tweaked the trunks here as well. So they've actually made the trunks quite purple, which is really nice. I think if you bring these, if you're doing kind of a spooky build and you bring these over to the Forgotten Lands, that would fit really nicely because it does have kind of that purple vibe over in the Forgotten Lands as well. I actually see a lot of these foliage and tree pieces working nicely in the valley too. Now there is, if I scroll down, there is a fairy tale tree. Now, this one does get unlocked from the tapestries, and I know I wasn't going to go into any other details about those, but I did want to point this one out because this is technically a foliage item, and you do get unlimited amounts of it. You don't have to craft it or anything like that. So we do get this when we unlock the very first tapestry when we come to Storybook Vale. And if I believe my sources are correct, these are the trees from the Once Upon a Dream sequence in Sleeping Beauty. So these are actually a direct film reference. If you know and love that film, then you might be completely enamored with these. But I did just want to show you those as well, because they are an unlimited item that you can use too. Moving on down, we see that we do have some other... Oh, I missed this tree. I missed this tree. Look, we do get a large Everafter tree as well. There we go. That's the full lineup of trees. Moving on down, we do see that there are some rock formations and some like big formations. However, I want to point out this one before I do that. This is really interesting. This is technically like bioluminescent. I really like that. It does have like a real height to it, which is interesting. It does have some glowing flowers on it as well. At night, this looks a lot of fun. And at night, a lot of the Everafter mushrooms glow as well. So I will offset the time so you can see those. But as I put that one down, I can see this being used because it's so elegant. Look at that. I mean, it acts as like an archway immediately. If you're doing some sort of build where you kind of want like whimsical but also structure, these are going to be perfect. So definitely use those. I can't wait to see how those get used. Let me place a couple of these mushrooms down as well. So we do have the giant versions of the mushrooms. You will see that they're used kind of like on the edges of the landscape and stuff like that. Placing those down, now these are really big. So do bear in mind, they take up a lot of floor space. I don't know what size that is. That might have even been like a 10 by 10 tile. I think they might be. So these are absolutely enormous. However, similar to the underbrush we do get 3 different colors. So you are going to bring these into all sorts of different builds and have these be suitable and also fitting for whatever you end up using. I'm going to rotate that one just so we can see the underside of it because it's got some texture, the typical mushroom texture. But as I've said with everything, they do have the ground kind of coming up. It's not a great deal on this one. You can see a little bit here, but it just blends those mushrooms into wherever they're placed down. And you can see that obviously there's no clipping. It does just adapt really nicely. Now, those are gigantic. So we're going to go into nighttime mode in just a sec after I place down these large versions. I'm not going to say it again. I am going to say it again. Use these if you are worried about your item limit because they come up with just one. That's all you need. You can have these nice big displays without having to worry about going over the item limit. So let me place all of these down because actually we get more of these with Storybook Vale than we do with the base game. And even just placing those 3 down together, there's another one to place, but just placing the 3 down already kind of decorates the biome, so you don't really have to worry. That's why I love these big structures so much. How many more have we got? We've got 2 more, right? So there's one here. No, that one is that one. And then we've got this one here. There we go. So obviously these little structures use all of the different types of trees that we've gotten, and they do use the blending. And yeah, like I said, I think that they've just done a great job with incorporating each of the different elements into just one big piece. Something I did want to point out is that the trees you see, so these trees just here, are actually already in the game. So these are in base game. These are sinister trees. I believe this biome was decorated with some of these sinister trees when I first landed in it. So it's interesting that they've actually brought in a base game item and kind of locked it in with one of these sort of like big pieces. I know that they've done that in the bind with the smaller items, the ferns and the reeds and stuff like that. Just something I wanted to point out because it does fit very well. So I wonder if they had this in mind while they were building out this DLC. Not that it was the base of the entire game, but it is interesting that they thought maybe, actually, we've got this, let's bring it into Everafter because it fits really well. So those are the big pieces. Like I said, just one item on your item limit, definitely worth using if you want immediate impact. And finally, I think that's it. So we're going to go into night mode and we'll take a look at these mushrooms and see what difference they make when it is nighttime. So I'll come over here. If you didn't know you could do this, you can offset the graphics to make it night mode. I'll just go 9 hours in front, and then you can kind of see they've just got a really gentle light to them. And I think that is really, really nice. It's a really nice touch. This one in particular, I know I said that one of the items in the other biomes might have been my favorite, but this kind of swirling one here, this is impressive. I really like that. I love the way that these little mushrooms glow. They've got a little glow if you stand under them. I mean, if I go into photo mode, it gives you like a little canopy just above yourself to add a bit of interest to your photos. So I think that these are the only items that do glow at night, and they are obviously over in Everafter. I don't believe that any of the other trees glow. Each of the mushrooms has its own little thing going for it, and then even the little ones glow as well. So we've got the little orange one glowing, and even this little blue fern that makes me uncomfortable, that one's got its own little glow as well. So on the whole, extremely impressive lineup of landscaping items in Everafter, and I think that Gameloft have really outdone themselves with this one. All right, my friends, that is it for this video. I don't know about you, but I am extremely impressed with all of these items. I cannot wait to decorate with them. I cannot wait to get my hands on some really, really nice builds in all of these different biomes. I hope you enjoyed this little showcase. It was quite long. I do apologize. However, I wanted to make sure you had all the information and know exactly where these items are should you want to decorate with them. If you did enjoy this video, then feel free to give it a like, maybe subscribe to the channel if you fancy. There's plenty of more Disney Dreamlight Valley content to come and Storybook Vale content to come. But otherwise, let me know in the comments down below which one of these items is your favorite. Maybe you can't pick a favorite, maybe they're all your favorite. I want to hear it. Let me know. I am in love with all of them. With that being said, enjoy your playthroughs of the DLC. I will catch you in the next one, and I will, of course, see you in the Vale.